Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did, so let's get started. Number 5 was Minions: The Rise of Gru, making $7.1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $334 million and a worldwide total of $758 million. So Minions still stuck around in the top 5, which was surprising to me at least, to see the fact that this was doing better than the other Universal film releasing in theaters this weekend, when, oh boy, talk about a disaster that was. But we're here talking about the top 5 films, not the top 10 films. So as in regards to this movie, this is still doing very well. It just puts its domestic total just $2 million away from the entire domestic total of the first Minions, and given the point when this video will probably be released, it'll already have probably surpassed that. So hooray! Minions: The Rise of Gru will probably become the second biggest movie domestically, at least, in this franchise. I'm sure everyone at Illumination is satisfied with this, and everyone who saw the movie and really liked it is satisfied with it. It also had the best hold out of any movies in the top 5, falling 35%, which is really good. It's still maintaining its core audience. Families are still rushing out to go and check this movie out, despite it being August and school starting back up very soon. So I think families are trying to see it while they still can before the summer is over. And overall, things look good for this movie. Worldwide, I don't think it's going to get to the $1 billion milestone that the first movie did, but if there's anything that could get it close, it's the fact that it was able to secure a Chinese release date. It'll be released in the country on August 19th, so if anything, that could boost it up to at least maybe $900 million at the most. I don't think it's going to get to $1 billion, just seems a bit out of reach. And also, given the fact that it's at number 5, and even though we're coming up with a very slow weekend at the box office, I think this will be one of, if not the last time we see this movie in the top 5, just given how much it's made. And once again, school starting soon, and the other movies coming out in theaters this month might knock it down, but still, this was a fantastic run at the box office, becoming the biggest animated film of the entire post-theater closure era. Almost reaching the same heights as something like Frozen 2 is quite impressive, and I'm very happy to see it making this level of success as someone who really liked the film. And I also think it's very fascinating to think about what other, not just animated, but kids movies in general could reach the levels of this, especially since we've got 3 kids movies left for the entire year. I don't think we're going to see a movie surpass this, but it'll be interesting to see if any of them can even come close to this domestic total. So we'll just have to wait and see. But as far as Minions goes, it's a huge box office hit. It's made well over its initial $80 to $85 million budget, and it had one hell of a run at the box office. Bravo. Number 4 was Thor: Love and Thunder, making $7.7 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $316 million and a worldwide total of $698 million. So this movie has now officially surpassed Thor: Ragnarok to become the biggest Thor film of all time in the MCU, domestically at least, and in terms of worldwide, it is just on the cusp of breaking the $700 million milestone, which, once again, given by the time this video comes out, it probably will already do that. So yeah, good job. It really goes to show you the mixed reactions to this movie for how long it took to get to this milestone, and even with it falling behind Minions, which was certainly something I wasn't expecting it to. But in all honesty, it doesn't really matter. I know I have been probably a little too negative towards this movie, but in reality, it's just that it just fell under expectations, and that it could, with its big opening weekend, it could have done so much better. But in actuality, it is still doing really well right now. It's one of the biggest movies of the year, certainly one of the biggest movies of the summer, and thanks to it now officially surpassing its $700 million milestone, it's sure to be in the profit range for its massive $250 million budget. That's another thing that many people, including I, were harsh on this movie for, the fact that it had such a huge budget and it wasn't really breaking out in the ways that it should have, but it's still doing very well. It's made the majority of that back. It's definitely gonna profit off of it, not by much, but certainly gonna profit off of it. And given how slow the rest of the month seems, this is probably gonna be the point where it does pick itself up a bit better, probably a bit slower than most MCU films, but it's still probably gonna make some extra change for itself. Not much more else to add here. It's just Thor Love and Thunder is still doing pretty well for the moment. Could have done better, yes, but I think that everyone who worked on this movie is pretty satisfied with the numbers, especially with how it was able to surpass the previous film. So yeah, still doing well. Number 3 was Nope, making $8.5 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $97 million, and that total still stays the same worldwide as it still has yet to be released internationally. Now, regardless of the budget or preconceptions on how well this movie was going to do and general audience reactions geared towards this movie, let's just take a moment to realize this, that this is an original R-rated horror film that not only is now officially the highest grossing horror movie of the year domestically at the moment, but it is also going to be the first R-rated horror film of the year to surpass 100 million domestically without even releasing anywhere internationally. I honestly think that's a really important factor to this film's success. The fact that it has done so much of this legwork stateside, and just because it didn't manage to meet the highest of expectations, people aren't reading into this as much as I think people should, because this is honestly a pretty important feat, again, that it's been doing all the heavy lifting stateside, and it's about to surpass a huge milestone thus far. And I think that's definitely worth noting and celebrating about it, the fact that while it wasn't as well received for financially as Jordan Peele's other films, the fact that it's doing as well as it is in the sea of other huge blockbusters and is notifying itself as solid counter programming similar to what The Black Phone did, I think is worth noting as well. It's just the fact that the budget might have been a bit too ambitious for this film, and that's why not too many people are clamoring to this film as I think they are. And add on to the fact that it, once again, it hasn't released in any international markets, which is kind of making it hard to make this film a box office success. Again, it costed $68 million, and you need to double that in order to become a success. So hopefully when it ever gets released internationally, those numbers can help boost it up to get it to that doubling point, and it can become a box office success, because this movie is actually doing pretty well for itself in terms of being geared towards an older audience and just being an original movie released in this sea of huge summer blockbusters. It just didn't, like Thor Love and Thunder, meet expectations, which is sad, but hey, what are you gonna do? This movie is still doing very well for itself, even with it taking a while to get to the doubling point. And for all the factors I mentioned before, I think that's definitely worth celebrating over. I do not know how much longer it'll be in the top 5, though. It does feel like it's going to be taking a bit more hits than some of the other movies in the top 5 right now, and even some of the other movies coming out later in the next coming months. It just seems like that, because again, it is an R-rated original horror film, and it also fell 54% this weekend, which is not bad, but given that it is one of the bigger drop-offs for a movie in the top 5, that should give a sign that it's probably not going to be in the top 5 for much longer. I don't think it's going to drop out like by next week, but I think its run might be coming Sure, we'll just see. But as for right now, I think this movie is still doing very well. It's still one of the bigger movies of the summer. And like I said, for the factors mentioned already, there are certainly some things to take notice about this film, and it is certainly not a failure. Number 2 was DC League of Super Pets, making $11 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $44 million and a worldwide total of $82 million. So in terms of second weekend drop-offs, this is a safe drop-off where you want your movie to drop off in your second weekend. The average drop-off for any movie in its second weekend, where you want it to be in its second weekend, that is around 50-55%, and this movie dipped just 51%. Actually, it held better than both Minions: The Rise of Gru and Lightyear, which is quite impressive, and that puts its domestic total just $5 million away from $50 million domestically, which it should get to by the end of this weekend, and it just puts its worldwide totals not only just a couple $1,000,000 closer to its initial budget of $90 million, but also just a couple $1,000,000 away from the $100 million milestone, which I think this movie has a good shot of getting to. So yeah, this is probably a decent sign of things to come for this movie. It didn't decline drastically, but it didn't hold as well as other animated films. It fell right in that sweet spot, and I think that within the coming weeks, or hell, the coming months even, this movie's probably gonna leg out and perform better than what people expected it to, given the lack of competition in terms of family animated films thus far. It's just really the factor that it just didn't open as strongly as many would expect, and that's probably what hurt it the most, because in actuality, I think this is a safe drop-off, and I think that throughout its theatrical run, it's going to perform similarly to The Bad Guys. At least I don't think it's going to make as much as that film, because I believe that film had stronger buzz than Super Pets, but in terms of hold and how long it stays in the top 5, I think they are both going to be similar in many ways. So yeah, overall, this is a safe drop-off for Super Pets. It's probably a good indicator on where it's going to go from here. Hopefully, it is able to beat the expectations right now for it and linger on throughout the top 5 for many months or weeks or so, and hopefully it can end off better than it started, because it's still definitely going to need a lot of help given the budget is $90 million, but considering how strong animated films have held throughout the post-theater closure era, I think this movie has a pretty good shot at that. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, and that was Bullet Train, opening with $30 million this weekend domestically and $63 million worldwide. So other than the fact that this was the only new wide release to crack into the top 5, this movie actually managed to meet pretty much everyone's expectations. It had a safe, solid opening weekend domestically and worldwide. The budget was $90 million, and it's made much bigger, better first impression than Super Pets, and it seems likely that it should surpass that initial budget worldwide by the end of next week. And thanks to a very slow August and even September, this movie has a shot of lingering around in the top 5 for quite some time. I think word of mouth is really going to help this movie out, and the fact that this is probably going to be the last big huge summer blockbuster of the summer 2022 season, that's what's really going to help it out, especially with how pretty much, once again, it's pretty much a slog for the rest of August and most of September, that is, and many of the other bigger blockbusters have already come out and are slowing down a bit, so this movie has full-on room to take advantage of this. What's going to be interesting about this film is the word of mouth, that is, and so far it has a B+ on Cinema Score. While that might be good for something like a horror film, that's not the best score you want to see for your big action film. That might cause word of mouth to be a bit iffy, but I still think this movie has got a shot. It might take a hit in its second weekend, probably, but once again, throughout its rest of the theatrical release, I think it's going to hold very well, pick itself back up, and make its name for itself, that is, in the box office domestically as well as worldwide. It seems to be resonating with people well, despite the B+ cinema score. We'll just see how that affects it for many weeks to come, but once again, I don't think it will affect it too much, so we'll see how well it does throughout its rest of its theatrical run. But as far as its opening goes, it's off to a very solid start. It just needs to double it at this point, so hopefully it can get to that doubling point very soon. As for right now, it's off to a very solid start. And those were the top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, and normally this would be the part of the video where I discuss the upcoming new wide releases hitting theaters this weekend and where I think they would land in the top 5. And while there are certainly a handful of movies coming to theaters this weekend, I gotta be honest, I don't think any of them are going to make enough to crack into the top 5, given the lack of marketing I've seen for any of them and the overall buzz I've seen for most of them. The closest one I think will probably get into the top 5 is probably Bodies. That just, it has the most amount of buzz and interest I've seen out of all of those movies coming out this weekend, and even with that, it's not as much to where I think it's going to make a huge impact into the top 5. But if there is a movie that does manage to crack into the top 5, I'll make sure to discuss how well that does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied? Unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.